Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in for My Hero Academia chapter 223. Guys and gals, I am so ready to discuss this chapter with you all. Man, oh man, I'm excited. Mostly because I want to talk to you guys about just things about writing in Shonen Jump in general and how that applies to Hero Academia and how that applies to what's going on in this situation. It's like that part of this video is going to be a bit more neutral. Honestly, if you are someone that likes talking about writing and themes and all that, I really want to get your opinion on it. You know, have a nice little back and forth. I'm a little bit busy today, but I will try to get to the comments. But yeah, so what I'm going to do, we're going to talk about the chapter generally at the beginning, and then the last bit of the video is going to be talking about the thematics in the chapter. Or specifically, the last part's going to be about what Redestro, I think his name was, he said his name just now, I just read it, Rikia, yeah, Rikia, what he said about the amounts of people that they have in this party. So I'm very excited to talk about that. So before we get into that, what is this chapter overall? I think you can argue it's a transition chapter. There's just no way around that. I mean, at the end of the chapter, you pretty much have Shigaraki being told where to go next. It's specifically Redestro trying to move Shigaraki from his current spot to the spot that he's in so they can have this fight. So no matter how you look at it, transition chapter. Other things that we got within it, well, we have the setup for the fight. We have the two parties making contact, so that's valuable. We had an explanation of Gigantomachia's abilities. The fact that he can go for like, what, 48 hours straight. We got some idea about just how fractured his consciousness is in terms of only seeing Shigaraki as an enemy. We got a little bit of information from Toga, specifically that she loves Ochako now as well. You know, that was worthwhile. And overall, like the first bit of the chapter, really, like, you're not getting any kind of really critical information besides character information, which is worthwhile in of itself. You know, like Shigaraki being excited, that's very good. Shigaraki believing he can do it, that's very good. The habits of Gigantomachia, that's also very good. But those aren't really chapter makers. Those are more like filling in nice little details so that people can come back later and read, oh, like, oh yeah, this was actually really interesting when everything's said and done. So, you know, not super impactful. That automatically makes it so that the Destro Liberation Army people, they take a lot of power in the chapter when they start making contact with Shigaraki. And it does help with the whole finger thing, that it was like cut fingers all over the place. That's a loud event, no matter how you look at it. That's a very loud event, and it was just cool to see how they perpetrated all of that. I just reread a chapter, and it's actually kind of funny. I just realized like Redestro pretty much takes up the entire half of the back half of the chapter, whereas where all the interesting stuff is. But yeah, in the back half we got like the back and forth between Shigaraki and Redestro, and we had like the drop of all his resources. During all that, we also have Redestro talking that he wants to create a society where everyone is 100% free to use their powers as they would like. So before going into like the bigger part of this chapter, this was important though, just for those people that are wondering like what exactly is the conflict of motivations between these two people, between these two groups. And I'm still gonna make a video that maybe goes a little bit more with references to the various parts in the manga, but I think one of the fundamental schisms in the philosophies between the two groups, that is the League of Villains and Destro's group, is specifically when you look at the League of Villains, they are going for a total annihilation. And then when you look at All For One, he was a ruler. So already those two groups, or those two entities, All For One and the League of Villains that is led by Shigaraki, they both have a future that revolves around keeping people under control, like under control by being a ruler or under control through destruction. It's pretty much wiping people out of the equation. And that's the problem versus the Liberation Army. The Liberation Army is pushing for a future that's pretty much anarchy in terms of regulation on power. Pushing for a future where everyone can be their truest selves. So that's the biggest problem. One future includes humans and is doing it for the humans. The other future is wiping out humans or putting humans under control. And since control's the problem, lack of humans is the problem. That's like the general gist of why these two factions are having a schism in their philosophies. Okay, so now we're gonna just move into that more neutral discussion that I just want to, like, you know, spitball with you guys. You tell me what you think, I'll tell you what I think. We'll have a nice discussion. So I see these characters, I see their credentials. You have the IT guy, you have the politician, you have Shueisha, and you have the master of a company, or the CEO of a company. And what I'm thinking is, I don't think the author of Hero Academia can use these characters to their fullest potential. And what I mean by that is, these characters are set up such that these are the kind of characters that would make following a story just so much more engaging. These are the kind of characters that can't be beaten that easily. These are the kind of characters that can spin the narrative, that probably have their hands in all these different circles. They have probably reporters on their side. They can move things however they want. These aren't the kind of characters that usually you would expect to just be able to go and beat up, because there would be too many repercussions to that. So these are pretty much the characters that would make for a very compelling crime drama or thriller. And yeah, I don't think the Hero Academia author can use those characters to the most frustrating degree that they can be used. Like, I want to be taken into this story where it's just like twists and turns, and you just can never really get them until you really got everything against them. But the reason I say that I don't think the author can do it, well, there's a few reasons. First, the author himself, I don't think he is a seasoned writer. Like, I'll always pull this out because it's always important to remember. Everyone's human, and it's important to remember that this author has had failures. Hero Academia is his first real success. He failed with Barrage. He failed with Zoo. Hero Academia is the first one that worked out for him. And even then, Hero Academia hasn't really... Like, the writing in Hero Academia is still relatively simplistic. And I say that with a lot of respect. Like, Hero Academia has its charm in some of the simplicity and just the earnestness of the relationships between characters. But you have to acknowledge it is still a relatively straightforward story. Another big problem in all this is also the influence of Shonen Jump, Shonen Jump's guiding hand, especially for battle shonens. Here's the thing. These characters are good for like a thriller kind of thing, if you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Because these guys are established in their communities. These guys can manipulate the flow of information if they really wanted to. But because Shonen Jump and Shonen Jump battle series in general glorify violence, violence ends up being the go-to solution and the final solution. And what I mean by that is, if you guys are seasoned Shonen Jump readers, I'll bring up two series. Naruto, you know, got its flack because sometimes it resolved its conflicts without a final fight. And it's really funny that people always complain about Naruto for doing that, when in the real world you really want a solution to be reached by words instead of violence, because violence might lead to loss on both sides. But I digress. You had Naruto that did that sometimes, but then when you went into the final moments of Naruto, what did you end up with? Well, you ended up with a stripped down villain that wasn't as compelling as the previous villain, so that Naruto and the gang could easily beat her up and have the fight be the final solution. And then beyond that, you famously had the final fight between Naruto and Sasuke, which in some ways, like, did it need to happen, or was it forced to happen? Like, again, violence became the final solution. Conversely, you have it also occurring in One Piece. In One Piece, there was a country that was really screwed, and I'm gonna keep it general. And there was a main villain that seemed that he had control over the whole thing. But the thing with One Piece is that the powers are designed such that if people get knocked out, the power stops working. So in One Piece, you have this situation where no matter how complex the situation on the ground is, the situation can be resolved if you knock out the one child that caused the whole chaos in the first place. And in One Piece's case, a 20-year, or not 20-year, maybe like a 16, 17, 18-year disaster was just wiped out by knocking out a child. So that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to say with Shonen Jump. Shonen Jump oversimplifies conflicts when it comes to combat, because violence can just usually fix everything. And this is the problem with these villains. These villains aren't the kind of villains... Alright, these villains can be beaten up, But these are the kind of villains that get more mileage out of, even if they get beaten up physically, they're still in the game. Like, violence is not the final solution for this type of villain. That's why I just don't think they're compatible with Hero Academia and they're compatible with Shonen Jump. I think Shonen Jump's policies, or just their general trends, are going to end up ruining the potential that these characters could have had. I would have loved to have a back and forth. Now, mind you, I'm going to just preface that we have been told that the League of Villains is going to be destroyed, so we may very well be heading into a really compelling narrative, and maybe even these guys becoming the main villains for a while, and maybe that will be super compelling. But honestly, I'm expecting it to be oversimplified, and I'm already seeing signs of that in this very chapter. In this very chapter, we see Rikia give Shigaraki an ultimatum. Either he could call in the heroes, or Shigaraki shows up in front of him so they can, like, finish this thing up. And that right there, that's the problem. The fact that he even gave Shigaraki the option of using violence against him, because that's the way in. They oversimplified the problem, and this is where the crux of the thing. These type of villains, if you were making like that really compelling villain, this guy doesn't need to get involved with Shigaraki. There is no need for him to actually get his hands dirty. If this was actually like a compelling, very high level kind of writing type of villain, he could have very easily have sent the heroes down to get Shigaraki and not get himself involved in this whole mess. Now, you as readers of manga might say, wait, Trip, but you know, this means that maybe he's an overconfident guy. Maybe maybe that's worth something. And it's like, yeah, that is worth something. You're right. Character flaw. Character flaws are always worth something. And if you say that, oh yeah, this guy's character flaw, you could say it's overconfidence or underestimating Shigaraki. And I would agree with you, but that there is the problem. Overconfidence is what brings down Shonen Jump villains. It's always overconfidence. The overconfidence flaw is the easy way of solving things, because that's what happens in One Piece a lot. One Piece, overconfidence is rife in the villains, and that's what brings them down, and that ultimately is a character flaw that prevents complication or, well, more compelling villain writing. It's unfortunate whenever you have a villain that can be brought down by overconfidence. It's when it comes to taking down a villain easily, that's what a lot of writers just end up kind of defaulting to, and that's the problem with it. Mind you, it's good that a writer can incorporate a flaw, but it's unfortunate with when the flaw is a simplifying characteristic, and that's what we kind of have possibly being propositioned here. Now, I'm saying possibly and likely because I do want to just clarify. Just because I think the author will not be able to draw out the full potential of this group of characters doesn't mean I don't think he's going to be able to not use them at all. Like, already in this chapter, he's made things hard for Shigaraki. He's given Shigaraki the ultimatum. He's found where Shigaraki is. This guy is already using his abilities and his reach to really affect things. And that's good, but it's just what I am most concerned about is that we head into this situation where even though these guys have been waiting forever, even though these guys have had 100,000 soldiers plus established, even though these guys have so much pull, that they'll ultimately be brought, or they'll ultimately put themselves in a situation where the League of Villains can attack them directly and on their own terms. Like, again, combat is where Shigaraki's group resides in. So if you're bringing them into a combat battlefield, like, how are all these different connections going to be useful to them during a fight? And speaking of connections, like, you know, these guys are well connected. If you were even to argue that, well, you know, he needs to fight them because then that sends a better message, it's like, yeah, sure, but that could still be accomplished by having the heroes swoop in on them. Because again, we have someone who is part of a distribution company. She has a book being distributed. These people can manipulate the narrative if they wanted to. They could just come up with a book that details the fall of the villains from an eyewitness account that saw the final hero takedown. They could write it up. They can make it. They can spin it in whatever narrative they want. They've waited for generations. There's no need for them to get hasty at this moment other than the plot forcing them to get hasty. So, you know, that's ultimately how I'm feeling. I feel these guys are going to fall victim to tropes in Shonen Jump. I think these guys are not going to be able to use all their different political connections or distribution networks. I think these guys are going to make stupid decisions at the last minute, and I think these guys are ultimately going to be brought down by their character flaws or their egos pretty much, because that's kind of how Shonen Jump does it with the villains. Although I'm concerned about that, I am hopeful. I do feel like the author could pull it off. Like, my big thing is that the author hasn't shown me hard complexity in Hero Academia. I still feel Hero Academia is a relatively straightforward story, and so everyone has their first time where they show what they're capable of, and maybe this arc will be the author's moment to show what he is capable of. Maybe this will be the moment that he shows like how much twists and turns he can put into a story. This might be it. But, you know, just because I haven't seen it before, I'm a little apprehensive, because I know the history of Shonen Jump, and because I know of how Shonen Jump and Shonen manga in general simplifies situations with violence. I'm biased to believe that this is more likely than not going to go down in a way that is unfortunate for these new villains that are being introduced and are established as being well known and all that. So I really want to hear what you guys have to say about that. You know, what do you think? Do you have high expectations for them? Are you expecting something above average, or do you think, yeah, you know, maybe this might go, for some of them it might go down the old Shonen Jump way? Let me know down below what you're thinking. And yeah, till next time, I hope you have a great day. And you know, I put up a pair spotlight for anyone who wants to watch that. I have a new end card. Gonna see if this thing works out. But yeah, guys. Overall, I want everyone to know I am very excited about this. Even if we don't get the absolute best potential out of these guys, I still think that the author has set himself and put himself in a place where we're in for a real treat. And I have one last thing I want to add. Oh man, guys, with the fingers being spread around, what do you think about maybe Gentle and La Brava coming back? Because think about it, if the police see that these fingers are all in all the places that the villains were associated, maybe the police can sleuth out enough that something's going on, and maybe they use La Brava to kind of figure things out, you know? I'm totally in for it, guys. Let me know what you think down below, but let's call it there. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day. Oh my god, yeah man, I am excited, all things considered.